Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make some iconic Christmas selfie cards using Copic markers and the Christmas Selfie stamp by MFT Stamps. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first scene that we're going to make is this little snowman family standing in front of the Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center in New York City. So I am going to start by stamping a mask. So I've stamped the stamp and I'm just going to cut around so that that border is masked off when I go to stamp the image on my main card panel. So you're going to see how this works in a second. So by using that mask, we get that little border off. So now let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to mark off about an inch on either side. And this is going to be the area where the Christmas tree is in the center. And then on the sides, we're going to give a little bit of a perspective drawing to show the stores on either side of this little snowman family. So if you ever go to Rockefeller Center, you'll see that it's there's this long corridor and the tree sits at the back of it, and on either side are a whole bunch of stores, and people will typically pose right in the center of that corridor. So you'll see the stores on either side and then the big tree in the background. So I'm going to start by blocking in the Christmas tree. So I'm going to take my lightest Copic marker color that I'm going to use for the Christmas tree. That is YG01. And I'm just going to start adding some flicks upwards. So the Christmas tree photo that I was using in that tree, the branches kind of went upwards. Sometimes you can look at a Christmas tree and it'll look like the branches or the pine needles are directed downwards, but for this one it was upward. So I wanted to kind of stick with that photo. So I am just going to add in my little pine needles, flicking upwards or on an angle of about maybe like a 90-degree angle from the center outwards. And then I'm just going to build the color gradually. So I'm going to go in with my next color. This is YG03. And I'm going to do the same technique, but I'm going to keep my strokes within that border for the most part. So the method that I'm using is that the lightest markers will extend the farthest out on either side, and then the darkest markers will stay towards the inside of the Christmas tree or the center of the Christmas tree. And then this is going to help to give the illusion of dimension, and then also that there is light emanating off the Christmas tree from all the little Christmas lights and Christmas bulbs that will end in the end. So I'm just going to keep working my way along here. So I'm on my third color. This is YG17. And I'm just going to keep working. And I'm also going to add a few strokes that kind of extend beyond the border set down by the first two colors, just so that our Christmas tree looks natural and like the branches are all different sizes, just like it would be in nature. We don't want it to look too perfect. Then it'll look a little artificial for purposes of our drawing here. Now I'm going to go in with some YG67 and be pretty sparse with that and only focus it really on the very center of the tree. And this is the last color I'm going to use. This is YG99. This is going to be the darkest shade that we use. And this has a little bit of a brown to it, and it's going to make it look like some of the little branches are sticking out from our little pine needle tree. And I'm just going to use very short strokes here and just feature them like around the heads of the snowmen and then like towards the center. Now we're finished. So now we can start adding in the detail for our buildings in the back. So I'm going to start by adding some windows. And this is kind of think of this part that we're working on now as an underpainting. Most of these details you're not going to be able to see. They're going to look really misty and ghostly in the background, kind of like a watercolor painting where what's in the far distance is really blurry. But I just wanted to help a little bit with the sense of perspective by filling in these little shapes before we color over it with a darker shade. So the center of the scene, since we're looking directly at it, everything is going to appear even, right? And the lines will be parallel. And then as we go to the sides, that's where we'll see more of the diagonal shapes going on, because again, the scene is kind of closing around the little snowmen people. So I'm just going to keep adding my shapes, and you don't need to be perfect here. It's just to kind of add to the like misty illusion that they are standing in the center of this little corridor with the stores on either side. Now in the center, I'm just going to go over my windows with some BG10. That first color that I used to fill in the windows was a warm gray one. Now I'm using some BG93 along the edges here. And now I'm just going to fill all of that in. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So you're barely going to be able to see those little windows at the top. It's just to give the slightest bit of illusion. And now I'm going to add a little bit more of a glow around our tree with that YG11, just building it outwards. And then I'm going to warm up the center with some warm gray one. Now we can start working on the shops around the snowmen. So this is probably my favorite part of this whole card, was drawing in these little stores. So I use some yellow as a base. That's Y04 and Y11. Either of those would work. And then I'm going to draw in the doors and the windows, the edges of those with my cool gray 7. And then we're going to make it look like there's a little bit of a wrought metal design here. So I'm just going to add little squiggles with my cool gray 10, and then a little bit of shading with my cool gray 3 and cool gray 5. And again, like the thing to remember here with the stores, you don't need to be perfect. You're just adding in little shapes to give the illusion of something in the background. So I'm going to add a little Christmas tree to this store window with some YG95. And I'm just going to add that very, very lightly. And then I'm going to add some little garland decoration around the window on the left with my YG63. And now we're going to add in some shelves for the stores. And you want to have those be diagonal lines that are pointing downwards towards the center, just to go with the perspective of the scene. And I'm going to make another Christmas tree on the left there with, I think I use YG63 for that. And then a little of the YG95 as well. Now I'm going to add some little presents and some little things you can purchase in the shop window. So I'm using my blue violet 34. I drew a little square and then put a bow on it with some red. And then I'm going to add in some little boxes. Maybe these are little vases with some B24 and then some more BV34 shapes. I ended up really liking how the BV34 looks in the scene, because it does make it look like there are these little images that are in shadow. And then every now and then, to just brighten up the scene or those little images, I added a bow with either a bright red or a bright blue color. We'll put some little Christmas balls on our trees. And now we're just going to darken up the edges with some Y08, just to make it look realistic, like the light is the darkest, the closest the scene is to us, and it becomes lighter the farther away the scene gets. And now behind our little snowman people, we need a whole sea of people behind them. So we're just going to, again, do the illusion of shapes here. So I just put in a bunch of dots with a beige marker, and then some dots with a black marker, some dots with a purple marker, and then we're going to color over all of that with a C5. And it's just going to give us the slightest sense that there are a whole bunch of massive people behind our little snowman family. For the star on top, I'm going to color that in with Y04, Y08, and Y13. And we can now color in our snowman family. And I'm going to use some bright primary colors here. So in order to make our little snowmen really stand out from the scene, I am going to keep their snow skin pretty white, because there's going to be a lot of busyness in our scene with the tree and the background and the store windows on either side. So we're going to make the snowman family pop out by having there be the contrast of their white snow people skin. And then also we're going to color in their scarves with some bright primary color. So for the snowman in the back, we're just going to give him a black scarf to help add contrast to the scene between the black and the white. And then This little snow person on the right, we're going to give her a bright red scarf. And then the little snowman on the left will give a bright blue scarf. And then those really bright colors will just kind of help to bring our little snow family forward in the scene. For the reds, I'm using YR12 for my highlight color, R24, R29, and R39 are all the shades there. And I listed those in order of from light to dark. For our blue scarf, I'm using B21 for our highlight shade, B24, B26, and B28 will make up the rest of the colors here. And if you want to add an extra little fold in the snowman scarf, you can do what I did here by adding just a dark blue line down the center and then leaving the area on either side of it pretty light. And then that's going to make it look like a little fabric fold there. And then for the snowman skin, we're going to shade them in with some blue greens. So I'm going to go in with BG11 first. I like shading in my snow people with blue greens or blues, really, really light blues instead of grays, especially since there's so much gray and black in the scene already. I thought it would be fun to give them some shadows with the BG11 and BG000. It also helps to reinforce the fact that they are really chilly. And we are going to add lots of snow to the scene at the end as well, just because I guess that's the only way that our snow people were able to see the tree, because it's so cold and snowy. It enabled them, I guess, not to melt in the crowd, right? If it wasn't snowing, maybe they would melt and they wouldn't be able to have this lovely selfie. Okay, so now you're going to see how contrast really helps the scene out, because we're going to add some blacks along the side. So I started with cool gray 10, then working my way in with cool gray 9, cool gray 7, and then we're going to even add some B97, it's really, really dark blue hue, and some BG72 on the sides there. And that's just going to give our scene a little bit of interest. So it's not just a flat black. We are going to be coloring over a lot of the scene with some white snow. So we're not going to see much of it, but I just wanted the colors to be interesting in the background. Now for the Rockefeller Center tree, if you've ever looked at it, it's got like thousands and thousands of these tiny little lights. So we are going to add those now with the tips of our Copic markers. I also brightened up the glow around the tree with YG00 a second ago. So I'm using R46 and I'm just dotting it really, really sparingly. And then I'm going to go in with another bright colored Copic marker. This is B06. Because we've already laid down quite a bit of color here, you will need to use some really, really bright saturated colors in order for them to show up on the background. Otherwise, they'll just look like gray or like brown against the green. So I used a little G09, some RV06, and I'm focusing that RV06 on the little yellowish areas around the tree because that's where it's going to show up the best. And now we can add in our snow. So to add in the snow, I'm using a white Signo Uniball gel pen. And I start by adding my biggest flake. So I will just kind of swirl my pen around a little bit until I have a nice big dot. And the way that I start is I start on the part of the scene that has the most detail to make sure that I apply those white dots in the right spot so I'm not covering up something important. And then I'll kind of work my way around the rest of the scene, just adding really, really big dots to start. So these are going to be the larger snowflakes that are towards the front of the scene. And then we're going to fill in the entire background with a whole bunch of tiny little flakes that are just going to look like they're off in the distance. It's going to help to add a lot of dimension to our scene here. And I'm just going to kind of dot my pen all over the background until our background is filled with snow. And after we finished applying our snow, we're going to stamp our sentiment. So this sentiment is from the Christmas Selfie stamp set from MFT Stamps. And I stamped that with some black VersaFine ink. And it says, "Have your selfie a merry little Christmas." So I just love that adorable sentiment. It goes along perfectly with our little scene with our little snowman family posing in front of the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree. I'm going to add this whole card panel to a card base. So this is an A2 size card, which means 4¼ inches by 5½ inches. And let's take one last look at our little card, and then I'm going to show you another version that I had done. So this is the first version that I had made, and this one is pretty much the same. The Christmas tree is done in some lighter shades there. So I use G20 to 24 for our Christmas tree on the left, and then we use the YG 01, 03, 17, 67 for the one on the right. And now this is our little Christmas selfie with Santa Claus and Rudolph in Times Square. And for this one, I use pretty much the same technique of keeping the center, the part of the scene that we're looking at, straight at, and then added some perspective to the sides with those buildings that are sloping downwards towards the middle. And then I just added the great little crystal ball that drops in Times Square every year. And I used some B60, BG11, and some cool grays to shade in the ball. And then I just added some crystals with a white gel pen. And that is pretty much it for that scene, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I really hope that you give these cards a try. They were so much fun to make, and I think they will bring a lot of joy and happiness to anyone that you send them to this holiday season. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon in another video.